Hi everybody, and welcome to this oil portrait painting demo where I paint a portrait of my lovely daughter Caroline. I'm using a linen canvas and I've got a glass palette to the right, and on the glass palette I've got titanium white, yellow ochre, light red, cadmium red light, alizarin crimson and ivory black. I'm just kind of mixing the paints as I go along. And so I'm using the light red as kind of a base for the flesh tone. So mix a bit of white with that and creates a nice orangey skin tone. And then you can adjust that with the other colours, whether you want it to be lighter or cooler or warmer, etc. So I'm kind of working the painting that way. I'm using liquin as the paint medium, so I'm painting this over several days because I was quite busy at the time I painted this, so I only had limited painting time. So you'll see the glass palette will keep changing. The old paints will be wiped off and there'll be kind of new paints appearing as I'm painting on different days. So I'm using liquin as a paint medium, and this works really well when you can only paint on certain days. So whereas painting wet into wet, you'd be under pressure to keep painting so the paint's not drying and going tacky and making it difficult to paint. Liquin does exactly what you want, so it's going to dry the paint in a day, and you can just kind of keep working over those dried areas and build the painting up. The bit of glazing and scumbling, whereas using linseed oil obviously would take longer for the paint to dry, but generally it's easier to paint wet into wet because you're kind of moving the paint around and blending it. So that is an easier way to paint, but depending on the circumstances of your life, if you've got like a family and a busy job and you can only paint at certain times, I think liquin's a really good choice to use, because then you're not worried about your paint starting to dry and go tacky and being a nightmare for you to keep working into, or you're not waiting for a week or two for that paint to dry so you can paint over it. So like with liquin, you can paint the next day over your paints. Might be a little bit longer with some of the really slow drying paints, like if you use a lot of titanium white or ivory black, but generally if you're mixing the paints like I'm doing here, the skin tones I'm painting in now for Caroline will be dry the next day, so I can kind of work over them a bit more and build the painting up. So first thing I'm doing, I'm just kind of getting the paint on Caroline. And what I'll do then is I'll kind of I'll know that it needs more work, but I'm just it's more like an underpainting. So I'll get the paint on and then kind of have a sit back and then kind of look at the areas that need more work. So then I start to work different areas and build the painting up. One thing I should mention as well, my studio lights I use when I'm painting, and they have a nice kind of like a light diffuser on them. The studio light's blue, and so I had to use some LED kind of like camera studio lights, but they seem to have been a bit too bright. So as the painting progresses, you'll see Caroline looks really quite bright on this painting at the moment compared with the finished painting. So you can see the light catching the Caroline's hair a little bit. Because it's black paint, it kind of really reflects the light. But anyway, at the end of the video I put on a photo of the finished painting, which is more true to its real colours, so you can see what the finished painting looks like. Anyway, so I'm kind of painting Caroline's hair in there and I'm following the form of it around, but still painting it in very kind of loosely, because I know I'm going to be going over it. Then she's wearing a nice little necklace, so I'm just painting that in. Using a little bit of phthalo green and I think ultramarine blue. And I think a bit of cadmium lemon yellow, but there's no kind of big deal about using the cadmium lemon yellow. It's just I wanted a light yellow paint, so it was just what I had. So anyway, now I've got the all the paint on, I'm going to start reworking. So I'm starting around Caroline's eyes. It was quite tricky to paint Caroline's left eye because she's kind of turning her head away a little bit and just trying to get the shading right for it. Took me a few goes, but anyway, I keep coming back to her eye. So I'm just kind of working the different areas of the face, and then I'll kind of go over them again as I keep working the painting. All the while I'm trying to think of creating more of like a 3D, getting that 3D feeling of a person's face on a 2D surface. So that's the kind of in the back of my mind as I'm painting. I wanted to kind of have a bit of realism about it. And I'm using cool and warm colours in certain areas just to kind of bring those areas forward or make them kind of recede into the background. And like I said, the nice thing about using things like liquin is you can kind of get paint on in your own time, and even if you just have an hour or two in the evening to paint, or the weekends, because we all know it's like if you've got a full-time job and you think, or you've got Saturday, Sunday off, but really you haven't. most people don't really, because there's things like food shopping to do, or if you've got a garden, you've got to do the gardening, and it's really having a full-time job, having a young family, it's really hard to get that kind of painting time. So, and that's one of the things I really like about using liquin. So you can see Caroline's nose, I painted it a little bit too red, but I knew that when I did it, but I knew I was going to come back over it a day or two later. So you can kind of just not get too kind of fixated on different areas. You can kind of get the paint on in a general way and then come back to it in a day or two or the following weekend and tweak around with it. Yeah, so I'm just kind of working all the different areas again now, like working Caroline's ear. Probably made Caroline's ear a little bit too red there, but I think I'll go over it again and lighten it up. So I'm not stressing myself when I can see something's wrong, because I know I can just keep working the painting. You could have a painting going on for a year if you wanted to, just tweaking around with it all the time. But I do get a little bit bored after a while doing a painting, so I always want to finish them. But yeah, you can see Caroline's kind of looking a bit more three-dimensional there, got a bit more form to her face, so I will kind of go over some areas again. Just trying to paint in her collarbone there, just get that highlighted. Using a soft brush as well, just to blend the areas. And I do like to blend the paint, but you don't need to blend the paint if you don't want to. Some artists don't like to, but I do like to blend and soften the paint. It's just all personal preferences. Really, you should set yourself up painting using the paints that you like and in a way that you like to paint, that suits you. But when you learn to paint, it can be quite tricky at first because you want to try all the different ways, and then one artist will paint this way that you like that artist, so you want to copy off them, and then another artist will paint another way, and one artist will use these kind of paints and another artist will use these kind of paints, and you end up buying all these different paints and trying all these different ways of painting, but eventually you just think, oh, I just want to paint the way you want to paint. Just forget everything else. The reason I'm using 3 different reds as well, by the way, is like I said, the light red is really good base for skin tone. The cadmium red light is really good in the kind of the lighter areas on Caroline's face, say like around the cheeks or nostrils, or obviously to paint the lips in. Alizarin crimson's more of a cooler red, so I would tend to use that in the areas that are kind of going away a little bit, or maybe in the kind of shadow areas that have got red paint in them, because it's a darker kind of red. Ivory black's really good as well because it's transparent, so it's really good for other paints being mixed in with it. So it's a really good paint to use. It doesn't overpower the paint, and it doesn't overpower the other paints as well. Yeah, just trying to get the bit more form on Caroline's neck there, where the light's hitting it. And there's the ding moment with the highlights in the eyes. I always do those near the end of the painting because they can deceive you, because when you put the highlights in, the eyes look a lot better. But if you haven't got if there's problems with the painting of the eyes or the shape, etc., and you put that highlight in, it can make you miss the errors that need correcting. So try to put the highlights in near the end of the painting. And just finishing off Caroline's necklace there, and that's the end of the painting. And this is the more true to colour painting. So hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on the next one.